This individual assumed they could simply advance forward without glancing behind, that creating space, occupying their thoughts, and displaying fortitude would be sufficient to dissolve the connection between you both. Yet the truth they experience in private moments differs entirely from the composed exterior they present to others. An ongoing internal battle exists between their outward appearance and their genuine emotions during solitary times. Within that quietness, your image emerges not as a diminishing recollection that weakens over time, but as an active force that questions their entire internal discipline. Certain instances bring a hollowness that nobody else can satisfy. The harder they attempt to disregard it, the more apparent becomes the lack of something fundamental in their everyday existence. This challenge in releasing you doesn't stem from fragility. It originates from the authenticity of your shared experience. Regardless of how they attempt to persuade themselves that your relationship was merely temporary or another educational moment, their physical being refuses deception and their emotions reject hollow justifications. Their internal experience involves perpetual evaluation between what you experienced together and what they've attempted to rebuild afterward. Regardless of how many individuals enter their life or what diversions they discover, nothing resonates as harmoniously as it did alongside you. When consciousness identifies its match, every other relationship seems manufactured, lacking, and shallow. This individual has transformed even though they don't voice it and won't acknowledge it to anyone, except possibly during nighttime conversations with their pillow. Clear indicators exist that they cannot sever this relationship. Repetitive contemplations about you or the subconscious quest for your qualities in different individuals who never match what you represented. Something vital seems absent, as though a fragment of their actual existence no longer resides where it should. Through separating from you, they've simultaneously separated from a portion of themselves. Alongside you, authenticity was possible. Without pretense, without requiring validation, understanding they could exist naturally with you creates a void difficult to occupy. Your non-existence weighs heaviest during the most tranquil instances. It isn't a vocal suffering expressed through outcries, but a profound sense of deficiency, a silent understanding that their emotions aren't complete, even when their thoughts haven't acknowledged it yet. This internal struggle occasionally manifests as arrogance, remoteness, or extended quietness. Yet none of these behaviors should be confused with genuine apathy. Conversely, someone experiencing intense feelings without knowing how to process such magnitude often relies on regulation and quietness to shield themselves from ongoing pain. It represents a contradictory reality. Your non-existence becomes the most powerful evidence of your continued significance to this individual. Understanding why their expression lacks genuineness and why their internal framework crumbles requires only examining what occurs mentally just before sleep arrives, when all diversions become quiet and reality claims its position, when societal facades cease functioning and nothing blocks clear perception. There, within their chamber's dimness, recollection becomes remarkably accurate. It doesn't recall disagreements nor rational justifications for separation. It recalls the sensation of belonging beside you, the tranquility your mere existence provided them. That serenity, once so effortless, is now entirely missing from their present circumstances. A quiet struggle exists between wanting to contact you to end the silence and the immobilizing dread of confronting their own susceptibility. They've attempted filling the void you departed with fresh pursuits, with labor until complete depletion, or even with different individuals in a frantic effort to rediscover the passion they experienced with you. Yet every effort concludes in quiet disappointment. They understand they can locate companionship, engage in dialogue, share moments with someone, but they cannot discover alignment. The distinction is agonizing and profound. Alongside you, everything progressed effortlessly. Mutual comprehension existed without extensive dialogue, a common dialect transcending spoken words. With others, everything requires exertion, like perpetual acting, where they must scrutinize every expression and movement simply to belong. The wish to substitute you represents perhaps the most profound injury, because they've understood that individuals aren't exchangeable components, and that the vitality you introduced into their existence was singular. This singularity becomes a weight when they attempt locating it in others' gazes and encounter only strangeness. Their present existence seems false. They perform a character, simulate enthusiasm about discussions that exhaust them and arrangements that leave their spirit unmoved. While they grin and agree, their contemplations drift toward you. What occupies you presently? Are you potentially considering them currently, or have you already progressed? Paradoxically, in attempting to disconnect from you and avoid emotional obligation, they've constructed an internal confinement of shallowness. They experience greater isolation among crowds today than when sharing quietness with you. This absence of genuineness exacts its price. Their physique becomes rigid, nervousness appears unexpectedly, and emotional depletion establishes itself. Weariness that rest cannot remedy, it represents the tiredness of sustaining falsehood, the falsehood that they're improved without you. The falsehood that you're no longer significant, the falsehood that they've moved past you. During quiet nocturnal hours, when sleeplessness becomes their reliable associate, a conviction expands within their chest like tangible force that they've forfeited something precious. They revisit final exchanges, seek indications, examine expressions, and afflict themselves with the notion that releasing you might represent their greatest error. Yet it's not solely that they long for you, they long for themselves. The iteration of themselves that you animated, the more courageous, more responsive, more vibrant iteration. Through departing from you, they forsook a portion of their own capability. Precisely this identity loss generates the hollowness no replacement can satisfy. Occasionally, they grasp their device, compose a communication, and erase it. Occasionally, they examine your profile, pursuing a hint, an indication of your emotional condition, hoping a pathway remains accessible, and dreading it might have sealed permanently. It represents a condition of immobilizing internal struggle, arrogance pulling one way, emotions pulling another, and thus they remain confined in quiet anguish. Yet this sensation of incompleteness isn't simple romantic yearning or injured pride. It possesses deeper foundations, profound psychological explanations that Carl Jung described with surgical accuracy. He demonstrated why certain relationships cannot be severed through determination alone. Why a particular existence continues residing within us, even when cognition insists we should release. Understanding this requires diving profoundly into human consciousness architecture. As Jung portrayed it, we frequently attempt rationalizing our feelings. We construct advantage and disadvantage inventories or attempt applying logic to circumstances that extend far beyond it. Yet the reality is, such relationships function on a plane cognition alone cannot entirely comprehend, because they don't arise from conscious consideration, but from profound, unconscious strata. Jung proposed that we aren't isolated entities floating in individual solitude oceans, but that we're linked through an invisible network of experiences, archetypes, and symbols. He termed this the collective unconscious. Within this extensive internal soul ocean, physical separations lose their influence. Their consciousnesses recognize each other, interweave in manners that time cannot eliminate. When two individuals experience an encounter like yours, it's not simple chance or shallow biological attraction. It represents a synchronicity case. Jung defined synchronicity as meaningful coincidences appearing without obvious external causation, which nevertheless possess profound importance for participants. It's that sensation of encountering someone and immediately understanding I've recognized you extensively, or the perception that fate itself arranged the instance. Such relationships aren't chance. They're founded on recognizing something ancient that already existed in both individuals long before they encountered in the visible realm. It's as though two components of a cosmic image, long separated, finally connect, triggering an audible resonance in consciousness. This explains why external quietness doesn't signify it's genuinely concluded. On the unconscious plane, the connection remains active regardless of kilometer distance or the fact that no communications are being traded anymore. This individual's rational cognition may attempt forgetting you. It may attempt convincing itself that releasing is reasonable, to observe forward. Yet the unconscious understands nothing of pragmatism. It recognizes only reality. And the reality that has inscribed itself into their consciousness is this. Alongside you, they contacted a profundity they'd never experienced previously. Jung believed such relationships frequently serve as reflection. The other individual appears in our existence to reveal concealed fragments of our own being, aspects we haven't yet incorporated or acknowledged. This individual cannot release you because through you, they experienced a completeness within themselves which they presently lack. With your departure, they also forfeited access to that fragment of themselves that you once mirrored back toward them. Their contemplations keep returning toward you, not from obsessive fixation, but from a profound psychological requirement to reclaim the equilibrium your relationship once supplied. It represents a natural consciousness principle. What has been recognized as essential cannot simply be suppressed without repercussions. The attempt suppressing this connection only causes its vitality to retreat deeper into the shadow, and from there it applies even greater force on conscious existence. Therefore, the incapacity to forget you isn't fragility. It's rather evidence that your encounter contacted the very foundations of their psychological and spiritual framework. Believing one can eliminate this through pure determination is like attempting stopping tides with unprotected hands. It's a futile struggle against forces exceeding the small human pride. That you're still existing in their contemplations isn't chance. It demonstrates that this relationship continues existing on a subtle plane, not to be eliminated, but to be incorporated. And precisely because it functions outside time and space, your physique begins functioning like a receptor, responsive to what's occurring with the other individual, even when your cognition cannot explain it rationally. When two consciousnesses have shared such profundity, physical boundaries dissolve. We frequently think our feelings are purely individual, triggered by internal processes or external situations. Yet in such relationships, your physical being becomes a resonance vessel for the other individual's vitality. Perhaps you've experienced it. You're completely tranquil, absorbed in contemplations or an endeavor, and suddenly a surge of profound sorrow washes over you. An inexplicable agitation in your chest, or conversely, a sudden warmth and lucidity that cannot originate from your environment. And these sensations aren't chance. They're a direct reflection of what this individual is experiencing at that precise instance. When they're overcome by remorse, when yearning suddenly strikes them, it doesn't remain confined within them. This vitality flows along the invisible connection between you directly into your energetic sphere. This constriction in your chest, seemingly from nowhere, is frequently the precise instance when the other individual is wrestling with their arrogance, yearning to contact you, but not doing so from dread. Your nervous arrangement, once calibrated to their frequency, simply responds to the emotional turbulence on their end. Even more subtle, almost mystical manifestations exist. Quietness instances in which you can almost physically sense their existence when their fragrance rises in a location where they cannot possibly be. This isn't fantasy, but the activation of your sensory recollection by their energetic sphere, which approaches you when their isolation becomes insufferable. This is how their consciousness visits you in instances when their pride forbids them to do so physically. These indications are tangible evidence that despite separation or communication absence, this individual's attention remains focused on you. The dream realm plays a central function. Dreams aren't just random brain projections. They become a genuine meeting location. If this individual repeatedly appears in your dreams, not as a historical recollection, but as someone interacting with you in the present, observing you or attempting to transmit something they cannot express in language, then you should pay attention. In sleep, rational defense mechanisms collapse, pride steps back, and suppressed realities surface. These nocturnal encounters in which you wake with profound emotion are frequently the energetic documentation of a dialogue between your consciousnesses while your bodies rested. That sensation of strange serenity or profound melancholy upon waking is the vibrating reflection of that contact. It's important understanding that this emotional telepathy doesn't function only in one trajectory. Just as you perceive their mood oscillations and internal struggles, this individual senses your lucidity and tranquility. When you fall into desperation, they sense unease and culpability. Yet when you discover internal stillness, it draws them magnetically in a manner they cannot explain. The magnitude of what you perceive is directly proportional to what they suppress within themselves. The more they deny the connection, the stronger the accumulated vitality becomes, and the more forcefully it reaches you. It's like a pressure vessel. The steam pursues escape through every small opening. What you experience as a sudden panic episode is frequently simply the release of the tension they're carrying, while attempting to live an existence that doesn't fulfill them. It can even manifest physically through sudden skin sensations along your spine, though you aren't cold, or an abrupt sensation of heat in your face or ears. Traditional wisdom says this occurs when someone contemplates us, and from an energetic viewpoint, this holds reality. It's the friction of their attention against your energetic sphere. You're not losing your cognition, you're perceiving an expanded reality. For in attempting to forget you, they contemplate you more intensely than ever. Your being, which understands the reality of your connection, is simply signaling that the channel remains accessible. When you recognize these indications, your viewpoint shifts. You're no longer merely a sufferer of waiting, but a conscious witness of a profound energetic process. You understand the external quietness is only a suspension in the composition. The harmony continues internally. These signals are undeniable evidence the channel remains accessible. The narrative isn't concluded, and the vitality seeks equilibrium. Before you learn why this individual is fleeing so violently from the magnitude you share, it's crucial to suspend, maintain your vitality, sense yourself in this instance, and internally affirm your existence in this transformative process. At this juncture, it's important to briefly stop the information flow so your intuition can incorporate what it has long understood, what your cognition is only now hearing. It's no chance that you're reading these expressions right now. If you've come this far, it's because there's a resonance within you saying, this isn't theory. This is the precise portrayal of what your consciousness has been silently declaring for a long time. Uncertainty is the natural adversary of any relationship. Perhaps you've spent many nights questioning your perception, wondering whether you fabricated everything. Yet the magnitude of the indications described cannot be artificially generated. You must acknowledge your own perception. That internal voice telling you that the connection is genuine is correct. Accepting this reality is the first step out of suffering and into your strength. You're not here because you pursue illusions. You're here because you want confirmation of a reality that has long existed in yourselves. These expressions, this video, are the universe's response to your request for lucidity. And this is why I want to invite you to a symbolic action, a small gesture through which you anchor this conviction in your physical reality and tell your subconscious, I accept this relationship. Go to the comment section and write a single expression, certainty. With this expression, you not only end the uncertainty, you also declare that you're stopping the struggle against your sensations. You affirm that you acknowledge the invisible connection and that you're ready to trust the process without depending on the outcome anymore. And you'll see you're not alone on this journey. When you read the expressions of others, you'll realize that there's a huge community of responsive consciousnesses who walk the same journey, sense the same anguish, and recognize the same profound realities. Your comment is like an energetic signature, a quiet promise to existence that you're ready to trust this process. Take an instance, breathe profoundly, and sense what this expression awakens in you as you write it. You don't need to explain your narrative to anyone if you don't want to. It's enough to take this one conscious action because it alone is enough to move something within you. When you acknowledge that your perception is genuine, space opens for one of the most agonizing questions of all. If all of this is so genuine, if the relationship is sensed so profoundly and the anguish of separation is so great, then why does this separation remain? Why does it seem that she is running from what she loves the most? The answer doesn't lie in a lack of affection, but in a profoundly rooted dread of transformation. Carl Jung described this internal dynamic as a confrontation with the shadow aspect, those aspects of ourselves that we've suppressed, concealed, or forgotten. It's not only our dreads and injuries, but also the unlived capability that lies there. Every individual builds a personality throughout existence, a pride, a facade to function in the realm. The individual you speak of has created a stable realm for herself, controllable and secure, far from anything that could shake her internally. And then you came. Your existence was like a beam of illumination, illuminating every dark corner of her being. Without intending to, you became a reflection, not only for her yearnings, but also for her unfulfilled fragments, her dreads, her insecurity. Your profundity made the shallowness of her existence visible. Your genuineness exposed everything that was not truthful. And for the pride, that is hard to endure. Loving you would have meant redefining herself. It would have meant questioning everything, and that is something many individuals instinctively pull away from. It's frequently easier to maintain a familiar dissatisfaction than to confront the unknown. Even when genuine happiness waits there, the separation you sense is not an expression of apathy. It's a protective response. She's not running from your joy, not from your warmth, not from your proximity. She's running from the sensation of being exposed, susceptible, without foundation, because you confront her with something she's been able to avoid until now herself. And so quietness becomes protection. Withdrawal becomes an attempt to reclaim regulation. Imagine someone who has existed their entire existence in a dim chamber. Suddenly someone pulls open the coverings and blinding illumination floods in. The first response is not gratitude, but anguish. The vision shuts and the instinct says, turn off the illumination. It aches. This is exactly what occurred to her consciousness. You flooded her with illumination and she had to withdraw to avoid breaking apart. Yet now, back in the darkness, everything seems emptier than ever. Because once you've seen the illumination, the shadow is no longer enough. And here lies the contradiction. She loves you, and yet she withdraws. She desires proximity, and yet chooses separation. It's an internal struggle between consciousness and pride. The consciousness calls for growth, for union. The pride fights for survival. The pride wants security, habit, regulation. It tells her that genuine affection is dangerous, that she'll lose her freedom, that she'll be injured. And for a time, this pride wins. It dresses itself in sentences like, "I need time for myself." It's too much. It's not the right instance. Yet what the pride overlooks is this. Once awareness awakens, it cannot be put back to sleep. This individual has already sensed how profound and truthful existence with you could be, and even if she blocks you, ignores you, even if she distances herself physically, she cannot escape her own reality, because what she now misses is not only you, it's what you awakened within her. The facade she wears begins to fracture. The fractures let illumination through, and every attempt to repair them only makes them more unstable. The weariness of pretending that nothing is occurring grows, and in that weariness lies your quiet hope, because she won't return, because you ask her to. She'll return when she surrenders. When the anguish of denying herself becomes greater than the dread of opening up, you were the trigger of her awakening. And awakening is rarely gentle. It begins with chaos, crisis, withdrawal. Yet this chaos is necessary so that everything can rearrange itself on a higher plane. You cannot struggle her internal battles for her. Your non-existence is your greatest gift right now. It forces her to confront what she's suppressed for years. Because regardless of how much the pride struggles, there's something it can never defeat. The hollowness your non-existence leaves behind. And that hollowness becomes the strongest force of transformation. What appears in your existence as stagnation is in reality an invisible process of transformation. In the realm of the consciousness, quietness is not an end, but the instance in which everything recalibrates. External quietness is a space full of internal movement, an alchemical phase in which your frequencies align without language. The genuine alchemy of waiting consists in turning the agitation of lack into a quiet strength, a magnetic pull that acts not through force, but through reality. In profound relationships, there's a paradoxical dynamic. As long as you're there, existing, available, the other individual can afford the luxury of suppressing her anguish and uncertainties. Your constant availability, unintentionally, acts like an emotional cushion. It softens the genuine repercussions of her decisions. As long as you maintain the relationship with your vitality, your proximity, your communications, your quiet hope, this individual doesn't need to take responsibility for the condition of your connection. When you withdraw, when you stop nourishing this relationship with your existence, vitality, and expectations, everything she's swept under the covering for years begins to rise to the surface. Then her cognition has nothing left to grasp. No communications from you to soothe her, no warmth to soften her dreads, no stability to reassure her that she's still loved, even if she doesn't admit it. In this quietness, she's confronted with the repercussions of her own fleeing. There's no one left to blame, nothing left behind which she can conceal the reality. She remains alone with herself and with the anguish she believed she could escape by distancing herself from you. It's precisely in these instances that her awareness begins to do what your previous involvement prevented. It begins to recognize, to awaken, to see. And that's why separation sometimes becomes the most profound catalyst for a return. Not because you would persuade her with language, but because her own consciousness pulls her back to the location where she sensed most alive, most genuine, and most complete. When she can no longer endure the weight of her own facade. When she realizes that everything in her has gone numb except what she sensed for you. Then, what kept her away begins to break, not out of nostalgia, not out of isolation, but out of an internal necessity to contact again what once awakened her. And it always occurs the same manner. The quietness breaks, the facade falls, and the reality, the very reality she ran from, finally finds its way back to.